good morning, habitat gardeners, bird nerds, um, like-minded souls. I hope you have uh, had a great week. I hope you haven't been part of the flood emergencies and the rain damage around New South Wales. Um, if you don't know, I'm Grant. I'm a horticulturist. I am a bird nerd, and I am especially interested in native gardens and how they can be put to good use to encourage wildlife to make use of the places that we share with the birds, animals, uh, reptiles, insects, arthropods, every other form of critter that we share the planet with. Um, Now, I thought it was probably fair at this stage in the journey to go back to first principles. So, stepping back to a conversation that I don't think we ever really have had um, in this format, in this form, since I started paying attention to habitat gardening and wildlife friendly gardening principles um, as part of the bird emergency. So, we'll we'll do that. What I'm going to do is step through some uh, the basic steps. Of course, any time you would like to make a comment or share a question, please do, and we'll go straight into that. I might drop the banner down. What do you think? Um, we might edit the banner. What do you think? And we'll make it run along the bottom. That might be good. Scroll along the bottom. Oh, good. We've got a edit. Ticker scrolling. Okay. Ticker scrolling. Save. Here we go. Sorry, folks. I'll be with the comment in a minute. There we go. There we go. What is the comment? Oh, the comment's just a bot. Okay. Oh, that took a long time to join the channel. Well done, Botrix. Welcome along. Um, well done. Well done. Okay. So um, if you want to attract wildlife into your garden, the first thing you have to do is start thinking like a habitat gardener. A garden for wildlife is about building a living system, a sustainable system that provides food, water, shelter, and places to breed for the birds, animals, insects, reptiles, amphibians, whatever it is that you want to bring into the garden. So um, you need to get yourself into that mindset first. And then the challenge is to apply those ecological principles to garden design principles so that a garden that works for you, the human inhabitant, will also work for the wildlife that is around you. And why I bang on about this so often is that every day in the urban setting, wildlife is losing the places that um, it needs to live. So let me let me go to this. Let me go to this screen. Pop into this screen for most of the conversation. So wildlife needs four fundamentals. I might say I'm reading from a blog post that I haven't published yet, but it will be on thebirdemergency.com. I'm just reorganizing the Bird Emergency website and uh, refreshing all of the podcast material and everything now to promote the habitat gardening. And that will be um, uh, that will be a really good repository for information. And I've been banging on about it for weeks. I've now got so many great resources available, and they will be on. Um, Look, I should be realistic about this. I should say they'll be available tomorrow for download for everyone. They'll be available um, on Patreon for members and on Substack. They'll be available in some form. I think it will be downloadable um, uh, uh, per guide. I should say their guides, and they'll be priced accordingly for their comprehensivity. I think the best way to do it will end up being through Patreon, but that'll shake itself out over time. Okay, here we are. The 4 fundamentals that wildlife need in every garden, and all of your design principles, your plant selection need to be guided by these 4 fundamental needs: food, water, shelter, and somewhere where the critters can breed. Uh, there is, of course, that moderating factor that sometimes the birds and animals that visit your garden will be using it um, for purposes other than breeding. But many of the birds and animals, uh, insects and arthropods, especially amphibians, reptiles, that don't range so widely, they need somewhere to reproduce. Let me say good morning. Good morning, YouTube. Hello. Couple of you here. So we're going back to first principles this morning if you've just popped in. But of course, comments and questions about anything are welcome. Okay. Now, there are a couple of simple rules when it comes to design that you want to keep in mind. And I think I always talk about this while I'm mentioning gardens and also the appropriate plants to select. But these are the the things you want to keep in mind at every step of the process. You want the vegetation to be layered, and that means if you've got trees, that's great. You've got a canopy, but then you also need a layer below the canopy, and then you need a layer down in the shrub at the shrub layer. So uh, high, medium, low. You need ground covers. You need mulch and leaf litter. You need things like sticks and little logs, hollow logs, stones. You need a whole lot of variety. But for the vegetation, think about layers. It's the simplest way to go. Tall, medium, short, and then ground level. Where possible, use indigenous local provenance plants. Now, this is more and more difficult in in the really urban setting, but in a semi-rural and outer urban setting, this is actually becoming a little bit easier, where you can find local indigenous nurseries. You can find uh, um, rehab and re-veg groups, seed saver groups, where you will be able to find, if not local plants, local seeds, and maybe just some plant material that you can propagate. So, in a perfect world, you get indigenous, local provenance species so that the local wildlife will find the food that they have evolved with. The next best thing is to get substitute plants for, uh, and in my list, I'm always trying uh, uh, to do that. So I've just produced last week, and yes, I know I keep saying they'll be available soon, and there will be a bunch of them available uh, today, tomorrow. Um, you, I mean, it's one of the challenges of becoming a gardener is that you need to learn a lot of plants. Oh, g'day, Stan. Stan from Kangaroo Island is here. Hope I'm fine. I am good. I did have one of those annoying sort of uh, headache flu things this week, so that knocked me down a little bit. But no, I'm fine. Stan needs to visit the native nursery before it closes for the season next week. Stan, tell me, in on Kangaroo Island, is there like a Australian native plant society group? Society for growing, what is it? Society for Growing Australian Plants, SGAP, uh, or is there a group of people who are out collecting seed, um, apart from the people at the local nursery? Um, because you can actually become a community resource yourself if you um, start doing these things, especially if there are rare or endangered, threatened um, vegetation communities on the island. You can build up your own sort of seed store and then share them around. Um, Interesting thing to talk to the Indige Nursery about. Now, where did I get to? Use local native plants. That was where I was starting with. Uh, Maximize structural complexity and diversity. I think I already started to cover that, where I said about the layers, but also everything else that you can put in. You want grasses, you want climbers, you want herbaceous plants, um, uh, you want the different ways that those plants can exist. So you don't only want climbers going up structures, you also want them rambling over, um, maybe over fallen logs or fallen branches, or uh, over rocks. Um, you want grasses and tufty things. You want soaks. You want permanent water. You want a whole lot of opportunities for wildlife, and you really need to zoom in with your uh, or yeah, zoom in you, as if you were doing macro photography. Think about life for something that is as big as your little fingernail. What does an insect or a froglet or um, uh, a newly born or newly hatched skink require at that size and scale? And if you think about that and start providing opportunities at that scale, apart from providing opportunities for what a koala or a brush-tailed possum or a magpie or a butcherbird or a red wattlebird needs, you'll start to fill in some of the gaps that you need. Stan telling me, yes, there's a Kangaroo Island rare plant garden and seed conservancy run by the non-profit and local botanist. Fantastic. Um, I might hit you up for the local botanist details and maybe talk to them for on a show at some stage, Stan. That might be an interesting one. Um, so layers, variety, local plants, complexity and diversity. So that's your basic framework of your garden. Next, something that I know I've talked about a lot because I've done the flowering calendars and things like that. Um, you want flowers and fruits and seeds to be available at different times of the year, and if possible, right through the year, but especially at the times of the year where your local habitat will have the least food available. And as our local habitats are disappearing, I know I talk about this a lot, is that once we build up a population, because your gardens have lots of wonderful food resources for maybe 9 months of the year, you do not want those animals to be starving for maybe the next 3 months. So, continuity of resources, seasonal continuity is really, really important. Um, the next thing you've got to think about is, and it's directly related to the conversation that we're just having. Micro habitats are important because that is part of the diversity of the opportunities that you create. Ponds, rock piles, log piles, uh, sunny patches, shady, moist areas, uh, different. This is particularly when we get down to um, the the mini critters, the spiders, the insects, the arthropods, um, mollusks, if you happen to have them. Uh, they all there are so many different types that they'll be in different little specialized nooks and crannies that you can create in your garden. So you know the tidy is the enemy of the of the habitat garden. The next thing is think about how the parts of your garden connect to each other. How can and this comes back to shelter and safety. You want to keep animals able to avoid predation, even though predation is going to be necessary in in a functioning system. You don't want to make it easy for the goshawk to come and wipe out your entire family group of fairy wrens or your entire family of New Holland honeyeaters because there is nowhere for them to hide. They come down to use a feeder and they can just be picked off. So think about having safe uh, escape routes or access points for all the places that they will use in the garden. Hedges, connecting tree lines or closely connecting tree lines, uh, shrub beds that are close to the next shrub bed so that the distance between them is not uh, so far that it makes it easy for them to be targeted for predators. Um, Now, the next thing is really important and it's becoming more and more important as time goes on. Um, don't take the short route, the chemical short route. Now, I think I've mentioned many times in over the course of the bird emergency. I used to work for some of the companies that produced and marketed some of the worst chemicals out there in their garden range. And uh, even though I had qualified in horticulture and I was a bird lover, I still hadn't adjusted my attitude to realize that all of those products are an absolute last resort. And I had no idea of the dangers that they were doing to like frog populations, for instance. So, uh, as a basic rule, don't use them. I think that's the basic rule. Just don't use them. Um, you have to have a a, a huge reason nowadays to use toxic chemicals in a household gardening situation. I mean, you can eliminate weeds in your paths and things like that just by using a steam, a little steam product, or just pull them. Just pull them, or chip them off, and then, uh, yeah. Anyway, I don't. I try not to be too critical about that, but I really think that they should be the chemicals that we know do immense damage to local wildlife really should be restricted for sale. You should be able to demonstrate why you need to buy them rather than, uh, well, yeah, I just think they should be restricted. Mm. Especially when people have no idea about drift and how far something like a herbicide will drift. Uh, just, yeah, just don't use them. Just don't use them. Uh, I do like the attitude that many gardeners have that, if you're going to have some pests, all right, plant enough of the fruit or the vegetable or whatever that you want so that the pests will get a bit and you'll get what you need and they'll get what they need. Uh, okay, principle number 8, always pick the right plant for the right place. And it sounds simple, but it really is the skill, the main skill um, in garden design and plant selection. And um, we might talk. We might talk next week or the week after a bit more about what what are the attributes, or what are the things that help you decide if you have the right plant for the right place. Um, Generally, an indigenous plant, and then using um, the guidance that you're given about the plant size or the cultural requirements are about the best you can do. And then, if you know the site well and you've tried different plants out, um, just keep doing what works. I think that is the way I like to operate. If you know something works, keep doing what works. Um, yeah. Number 9 is more about function, uh, the function of the garden. Make sure that you use fencing or plant placement, such as use prickly plants in arrangements that might keep uh, dogs, for instance, away from parts of garden beds. It's it's a whole other subject, sharing your habitat garden with pets. Um, but perhaps you fence the areas, or you really should. The areas that your pets can use need to be restricted and kept away from the areas that your wildlife friends will use. Um, and you know, your cat needs to be contained. If you've got a cat, it needs to be contained. Uh, I've got here in my post that have a cat curfew. I think it's even you've got to be stricter than that, and I will re-edit. I will edit that. Your cat needs to be restrained. Your cat cannot be mixing with the wildlife in your garden because the cat will kill your wildlife. So, cat run, cat yard, need a cat roof, um, so that animals can be safe away from your killer. Dogs are a bit well, they shouldn't be that different, should they? But dogs will destroy habitat, especially very active and young dogs, puppy dogs, can destroy habitat that you've spent a long time creating in an afternoon. So um, think long and hard about what you can do with a wildlife garden if you have a pet, and how you will manage your pet and how you will manage your garden. Um, yeah, it's a whole nother subject, and actually I'll venture into that. Um, we'll venture into that quickly, shortly, not today, but in the next week or two. What do different animals typically require? Birds, honey eaters, and lorikeets need nectar-rich flowers, and they need somewhere to perch, and because they need somewhere to feed, so they need access to the flowers, obviously. Seed eaters. Now that's fairy wrens, of course. I need to edit that, don't I? Finches and wrens. Native grasses, seed bearing shrubs and trees, and areas to forage. And then your insectivores need dense foliage for foraging, uh, and they need a garden which is rich in insect life. You need to have your insects and your arthropods. Um, they need to be very abundant to bring those birds in. Um, so your density of planting will be important, but also the mixture, the variety of your plant selection will be important. Parrots, kookaburras, kingfishers, owls, owlet, nightjar are cavity nesters. So if you want them to breed in your property, you need to have mature trees with hollows, as discussed last week, or because uh, that will be a case of remnant vegetation. If you don't have them, you need to provide uh, nesting opportunities in the forms of nest boxes of the appropriate dimensions. A whole different subject, but we will go there. Or you can go back to earlier episodes where we have covered that. And birds that forage on the ground, magpies, whip birds, magpie larks. I noticed the grey butcherbird here hunting crickets on the nature strip the other day. They need open patches. They need, well, it's the only good thing about the lawns is that there will be the grubs and crickets in those patches of lawn, but especially leaf litter, garden beds, um, uh, low shrubs with overhanging branches, and those areas or those places that insects and spiders and um, arthropods will be sheltering and feeding will be available. Small mammals and marsupials, we need hollows. Um, Smooth bark eucalypts is what the gliders choose generally uh, to scurry up and then use to launch from. Uh, but that means there needs to be spaces for them to glide from place to place. Possums that are not gliders need canopies that are close enough for them to reach straight out and jump into, or they need to be close enough for them to make that leap. You, you want to keep those animals off the ground where they may encounter cats and dogs. Um, Bats, large hollows, caves, bat boxes. Uh, Also, permanent water is really important for bats. Um, and that's something that I had not thought about until I started looking into bats. But then you think, why didn't I think about that? Because I've seen all those documentaries of the bats skimming uh, rivers and waterholes and whatnot as they come out of their cave or out of their hollow tree to go hunting for the night. Uh, Reptiles need sunny spots to bask in the sun. They need to warm up to get active. They need rock piles. They need loose mulch to forage amongst. Um, they also hide in leaf litter, and that's where their insect food will be. Uh, Snakes. Uh, Now, I know a lot of people won't want snakes in their environment, but snakes are out there. So you will have snakes. If you have a healthy wildlife garden, I think you will have snakes visit you. One thing a snake handler or a snake catcher once told me, this was down in Gippsland, is that most places where snakes come into houses is because they can't find any water uh, out in their normal environment. So, in a period of drought, it's important that you have water in your garden, which which may indeed keep the snakes out of your house because they will sense that there is water in your laundry and in your bathroom, or maybe you've got dripping taps around your house. Make sure that you've got water for the animals, and then they won't need to come inside. The other thing too is if you have lots of food sources in your garden, the snake won't be as curious to come in and try and find the rodents that are living in your walls or in your ceilings or under your house. So yeah, it's not there's no guarantee that they won't come in, but they won't be as tempted to invade your space if you provide what they need in your space, in their space. And I mean, let's just be honest. There are millions of snakes out there, and they're all engaged in a quest to survive. And as we take what they need away from the suburbs that we live in, um, that they're not just giving up. They'll find somewhere to get what they need, and often that's going to be in your backyard. So make them give them places in your backyard and give them places where they can hide and places that you will not go and disturb them. Then everyone will be happy or moderately happy. And that's another argument for containing your cat and your dog, isn't it? You don't really want your dog to be nosing around into the safe space of the snake. Just saying. It seems obvious, doesn't it? Okay. Amphibians, basically frogs and toads in Australia, in some parts of the world, newts and salamanders. Shallow ponds with shallow sloping edges. I know we talked about this when I talked about water in the garden once before. The sloping uh, approach to a water body is far more animal friendly, frog friendly, lizard friendly uh, than the deep sides of a fish pond. So, yeah. So it's about adjusting your idea about what is a pond. If you want a fish pond, build a particular fish pond. But a fish pond is not a pond for wildlife. Um, you also want stuff in your pond for wildlife. You want hollow logs, you want rocks, you want curled bits of bark, you want weedy plants. Remember, you are um, providing habitat for wildlife. And there is the note there, fish and tadpoles don't mix. So if you want a fish pond, have a fish pond. Your wildlife pond shouldn't be a fish pond. Should make sense, right? Fish eat tadpoles. Okay. Uh, Invertebrates. Now, these are all the things that we think of last, but you do need native bees, hoverflies, butterflies, moths, um, all and lots of the native flies. So you want nectar and pollen producers, um, plants that the caterpillars will eat, and the the availability of those resources over the year or at the appropriate times for your target species of bees, butterflies, moths, whatever. Uh, you need the appropriate food resources at the appropriate time. So it's a whole nother subject to get into. But I know we've talked about it frequently, and I will make more resources available. And I probably should note too, what I'm doing is trying to do them into climate, well, in two ways, into climate zones and into cities, starting with cities. I guess we'll get into regions over time. And then I want to sort of take requests from people about target species that they want to attract and then look at particular plants and particular strategies for those species. So I've started doing a lot of work. I've got a really long, detailed list for honey eaters, also for um, uh, the individual fairy wrens. I've started with the parrots. So these are all the kinds of things that will become available over the next little while. So you got that to look forward to. Um, so yeah, and I did the honey eaters genus by genus. I did the sunbird as well, and then I will try and go through all of the sort of families, or maybe the bird groups, Australian bird groups, and try and match what. And what I've done is match. Takes a bit of time, so bear with me. But match the where there is research available for what those birds eat, and the species have been noted. I've tried to find cultivated whether those species are in cultivation, or find a substitute or an equivalent and suggest those. So, yeah, it's a bit more detail than I think is available generally. So hopefully it'll be something that is useful for people over the years to come. Um, okay, something else you need is the the animals that will break down the leaf litter, the twigs, the logs, and fertilize, enrich soil naturally. Um, so above the ground, your beetles, wood lice, fungi, and then you want the worms and um, other beetle larvae and whatnot under the ground, doing all that good work. That's another reason you don't want to be using pesticides, herbicides, uh, pretty much at all. Uh, and predatory insects and spiders, they provide food for possums, small possums, birds. Um, so the best way to get all of these things is to have variety in the opportunities, in the micro habitats that you provide, and variety in the types of plants that you are using. So, okay, let's try and step through how to start. First thing to do a site assessment. And that is taking a fresh look at your garden or at your farm or at your block uh, through fresh eyes. On a diagram, on a plan view, where does the sun fall? How much of the day does the sun fall on that area? Which areas are shady? Where does most of the wind come from? Where do the hot winds come from? Which parts of the garden are quite wet? When it rains heavily, where does the water go? What type of soil do you have across your block and in the existing garden beds? Is it loam? Is it clay? Is it sandy? Does it crack and dry out in summer? Does it get mushy? Does parts of it stink? Make notes of all of those things, so that will help someone like me um, help you pick plants or maybe do some amelioration, uh, help you with ideas for drainage. Um, Now I've got access points. What access points that you and your family need to use, but also where do you notice how do birds and animals already come into your garden and leave your garden? You may not know these things already, but if you do, make a note of them. Like, is that the way the magpies always come in or out? Is it the way the wattlebirds always leave if you open the back door? Uh, yeah. Do they move through an existing um, uh, sort of corridor along your street or through your neighbour's backyard or garden? So just try and make note of any of those things you already know about your garden, and then if there's things, views are really important for people. They're a really important psychological thing for people, and if there are views that you do want to keep in your garden, like if you do like being able to look at the top corner, the top of a building that's on the city skyline, or across near your school or something, uh, anything, it can be anything at all. But if there is something in the view that you want to keep, make sure you note what the sight line is and how tall the maximum intrusion can be from the ground up to that sight line. Maybe it's low down, but all those little things, so that these things these limitations are noted when plants are being selected for your habitat garden, either by you or by somebody like me who will help you do that. Um, make a note of any valuable trees and plants already that animals are already using, animals or birds, that you will want to retain or uh, perhaps make better use of. Any hollows, anywhere that you notice that birds are already nesting. If you know that there is places that honey eaters, or maybe you've got some yellow robins or something in fairy wrens, thornbills that you have already noticed are nesting somewhere near about, well, make a note of it and um, make a make an effort to make sure that that situation will remain. Um, and they've got their note the neighbours' fences, etc., where you have uh, wildlife corridors that the animals or birds are already using. Um, this next bit is really important. Set realistic goals. Uh, depending on what your plot of land is, what you will be able to bring in is going to be vastly different. I know I've mentioned many, many, many times before. I'm in a I'm in a unit in a block of flats across the road from a park. Um, my opportunities for bird watching and bringing in or providing habitat is really protecting what's over in the park, and I do that. I think I mentioned I had a run in with the local council when they were about to take down the last patch of wattle, which is the only vegetation that actually grows down to ground level. Now, someone had been complaining that it's messy, and someone had also complained that it stops them from being able to watch their children play in the park. Now, I heard the chainsaw start. I haven't told this story before. I heard the chainsaw start and I went over and I said, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And he told me. And I said, "No, you can't. You can't do this." And I said, "Well, let's have a think about this. There are there are only two places that this bush is blocking from the sight lines from the houses that could possibly be blocking a view of the playground equipment. And I know one of them, there are no children and there's no grandchildren. I've never ever seen children in that place. And the other house has a big front fence and lots of vegetation in the front. So they're obviously not able to look at the park anyway. So that's a bullshit reason. So don't cut it down. Anyway, he called his manager to come down and talk to me, and we had a long discussion. And in the end, they trimmed it and they reduced the size of it a bit, but probably three quarters of it is still there. And it's the last feature in the park that holds foliage down to ground level. Um, so, and I said to them, "How is this consistent with your biodiversity plan?" And yeah, I'm pretty sure that eventually they'll take it out because complaints get much more action than people saying, "Oh, good on you, you've done the right thing there." Um, but yeah. Anyway, yep. So set realistic goals. Um, the scale of your land holding uh, of your garden will mean you will have more opportunities to bring more things in. Also, the animals and birds that are already around you will really dictate what you will be able to achieve. Um, I mean, I know it's a small sense of joy, but uh, I've mentioned recently that the grey butcherbirds have been calling. Well, I now know there is a pair who are breeding because there are two young, juvenile grey butcherbirds hanging around and starting to use the bird bath at my place and feed uh, on the little patch of lawn out the front of my place too. So, uh, so that's something new from when I first moved in here. And I heard new bird calls yesterday. Not new forever, but the pardalotes are back. The spotted pardalotes are back. So their breeding activity will will commence soon. Um, and they do have hollows up in some of the big trees fringing the park, the big eucalypts. So I always feel good when I hear that. Um, so if I ran into one of my neighbours and they were talking about wanting to put nest boxes up, well, I would probably tell them that pardalotes are around here, red rump parrots are around here. We've obviously got lorikeets, galahs, um, and corellas and cockatoos around here. I would probably encourage them to look to try and encourage pardalotes and perhaps red rump parrots would be good. Okay. Step three. Step three. Step three. Um, Step three. Draw a simple plan. So sketch out your garden to scale. Get the house, the paths, the trees, garden beds, everything that you already have in uh, in place. Mark them in as accurately as you can, uh, to scale if you possibly can, and then mark in pencil the things that you are thinking about doing, what you would like to do, what you would like to extend. Paths. Where do you think you could put nest boxes? Um, and then mark the things that you already know about your garden that we talked about uh, noticing in the site analysis. The sunny spot where the lizard already comes and sits on a log, your damp, shady corner, your shelter belt, your uh, your dry, leafy spot under the gum trees. Start thinking about like an insect or a lizard, and note in some of those places. Also, uh, I know I often mention in the live streams that it would be good to know what the plants are that are successful from a usage from the bird's point of view in your own garden. Do try and think about that. What is already being utilised, and how can you build on that? Um, Next, we start thinking about the plants and how they would be arranged, selecting the plants, how they would be arranged. So, um, I 4 or 5 can come in either order and really at about the same time, because you need to uh, you need to know what the soil that you are going to provide or that you already have is, the characters of the soil before you start selecting your plants. But you can start selecting a broad group of plants that you would be thinking about based on what you would like to attract into your garden. Uh, and often you will reassess uh, what you are thinking about plant selection when you know a bit more about your soil. Um, well, let's start with choosing plants and the plant palette, and that can include the color palette, and that can include um, the texture of the foliage that you want to provide. Gee, we haven't really even talked about texture and foliage at all so far in this conversation. But yeah, you that's always really important as well. So we're aiming at layers, layers both up and also layers across. So if you have a large garden bed, uh, you start low at the front and you build back to the fence, perhaps. But you might divide that layer um, into sections so that you can perhaps put a specimen plant in a break. Uh, that'll depend on your sight lines and a whole lot of other things that will be about you more than about the animals or about the birds. Um, but trees, large shrubs, median shrubs, low shrubs, ground covers, tussocks, climbers, ramblers, scramblers. You want to be building all of those into your plant palette. Uh, you also want to be choosing plants that provide nectar, pollen, seeds, fruit, and even things like mistletoe, uh, um, grassy tufty species, sedgy tufty species, sort of climbers like Canedias with their pea flowers and their solid hard seeds, or uh, clematis with their um, butterfly and moth friendly flowers that then explode into seeds, a bit like dandelions that other seed eaters will utilize. Um, it's a, there's a lot of things to consider, and there are so many options. It's one of the reasons why it's so much fun. Okay. So when you have an idea about what you want to plant, you need to make sure that the soil will suit what you want to plant. Uh, if you can easily ameliorate your soil or provide the structure that is required, you can go ahead and do that. Might involve bringing some soil in. It might involve treating with some gypsum or some lime or something. Um, Generally, I like to try and work with what is already there and do minimal um, alteration. One of the It's very, very expensive to bring a lot of soil in. And what people don't seem to realize is that if you are bringing soil in, if you're bringing 30 tons of soil in, so that would be 3 truckloads um, coming in, that's come from somewhere else, right? There's no there's no factory out there making garden soil. Uh, the sand that is part of any of those garden mixes, or the clay, or the loam, has been dug from somewhere else. So, uh, yeah, I know there's a market already for it, but gee, yeah, just try and use what you've got. And if you need to build your soil up, um, the best way to do that is with organic material, and maybe that can be from mulches from your own compost. Um, the best thing for soil health in your existing soil is to disturb it as little as possible. I went through horticulture college and we was all about digging it up and turning it over. And we kind of know now that that's crap. You only need to do that for specific purposes. In most cases, you don't want to be disturbing the soil. Uh, Now we can talk about that much more in other conversations, but in general, uh, you will improve your soil structure more by making organic material available and then letting the soil organisms do their job by incorporating the organic material that as it breaks down on the surface of the soil into the soil, uh, creating a healthy microcosm, healthy environment will take care of that for you. In the interim, you can create the healthy soil conditions in the planting hole that you dig out. But I'm not going to talk about that. That's a whole different conversation. Um, and when you do your planting, plant at a time of the year when you are more likely for the plants to establish and survive. So that means you don't go planting in the middle of summer if it's possible to avoid it. I know sometimes that's not it's not avoidable, but please try and uh, uh, make that a priority. So do your planning and source your plants with that in mind. Um, if it means you order your plants way in advance and then you organise a pickup from the nursery or the supplier at a time that is more suitable for you for when you want to plant them, do that. If you have to pay a little holding fee or something, do that. Otherwise, build a little nursery for yourself, a little shade house or something to bring those plants in and care for them, maintain them until it is a good time to plant them out. Different parts of the country will have different months for doing that. I mean, Stan mentioned that the local Indige nursery is only open at certain times of the year, and I am going to go out on a limb and say that would be the time of the year where they want you to pick up the plants, and then they want you to go and plant them, not wait until Christmas to start planting plants because it's too hot. Yeah. Also, you don't want to be planting into waterlogged soils and things like that where you may just be planting them into uh, basically into a pond or a puddle and that the plants die from root rot or something. Okay. Uh, Pop in a wildlife pond. These are the kinds of things that you need to add if you have the space. Um, Permanent water. It gives you the opportunity to have a different set of uh, plants in your palette as well. Uh, Log piles, rock piles, uh, uh, piles of leafy litter, um, insect hotels, and insect hotels can take many, many forms. How many times have you uh, had a stack of pots and that you start pulling them apart and then you find that there's hundreds of different critters living in your stack of pots? Well, that same principle holds for uh, piles of rocks, piles of wood, piles of stones, mixed piles. So think about all those kind of opportunities. You can, of course, get sort of the commercially recognised B hotels and whatnot, uh, but they're just basically bundles of sticks or bundles of hollow sticks. So give the more varied opportunities that you provide, the more types of life you will have living in your garden. So this is when you can pop in nest boxes for the target species you want. Make sure you want to keep pest species out. You also want to keep predators out. That's a whole different subject, and we'll talk about that at a different time. You can go back to all the earlier conversations we had on the channel for um, nest boxes. We've done that, done a lot of that. I mean, last week we talked about trees that you can select for that will provide hollows in 50 to 100 years' time. Provide water and micro water features, um, bird bath dishes. Make sure your bird baths have rough surfaces and the, make it easy for the birds to get out. If you have a bird bath, if you already have one, but it's got a glazed ceramic surface, well, get some pebbles and uh, you can graduate the edges just by putting some pebbles in and graduating. Create a little beach. Um, uh, Utilize the equipment that is available, like small drippers and little spray heads, um, tiny little fountain. Birds like those kind of things. It will bring them in. Um, Obviously, keep the water fresh. You don't want dirty water, and you want it to be shallow so that birds that do get waterlogged, and they will, because some birds love the water so much and they have so much fun that they then uh, become so heavy and slow that they can't get safely out of the deep water. You also need perches very close to the edge of the bath so that those birds can dry off safely. And uh, and there needs to be some refuge plants close by because they're very vulnerable when they have just had a bath to attacks from uh, any predator. I'm thinking especially goshawks, sparrowhawks, currawongs. So yeah, bear that in mind. Um, Make sure you establish your plants. Give them every chance to establish well, and then once you have the plants established, then you want to pull back on the watering. And then when you do water in the right way. Now, the right way will be different for different plant species, but in general, you want to water well and water deeply. Plant roots will follow water. If you only do shallow watering, most of the plant roots that will plants have different types of roots, but the roots that are there to uh, find water and bring water into the plant, they will be at the top of the plant, the top of the soil surface, and that means they are very susceptible to dying if there is a drought. If you go away on holiday and your watering system breaks down or something, you want them to have a deep root system down into the areas of the soil zone where there is likely to be some moisture retained. So I need to have another conversation with you all, don't I, about watering and how water moves in soil, I think, and where it is retained. Okay, where are we next? Now prune your plants. Uh, Part of the plant selection is knowing which plants you can prune uh, hard or severely. Part of the plant selection should be about knowing which plants you can do light pruning to and encourage a second flush of flowering. Um, Bear in mind that if you do prune some plants severely, that reduces their use as a cover, as a refuge plant. So you need to make sure that you don't prune everything all at once. Um, and leaving dead twigs on plants where possible, where it won't lead to disease onset of the plant, is actually part of establishing that variety for different critters to live. So just adjust your mindset a little bit. But there is always uh, a balance there, that sometimes deadwood will enable disease to enter that plant, and it may be very unhelpful for the plant in the long run. But uh, that doesn't have to be the case. Now, the last thing I want to note is um, keep notes, or keep a diary, or keep a journal, or use iNaturalist, or just keep your own little seasonal diary so that you can understand what's going on over time in your garden, and what the animals and birds are doing in the garden, and what's working and what hasn't worked, so that you can add or you can change in your garden. Um, if you find that there are particular months or seasons where your food resources are low, and those birds or animals are not using the garden, well, change it up. Um, okay. I think I've given a bunch of these hints there for the construction ideas, but these will be in the blog post. I will share these out in the socials. Uh, Plant selection approach. I think we've talked a bit about that already. Um, I'm just winding up a little bit because I know how long I've been prattling on. Um, uh, oh yes, there we are. I will be making that. Uh, I will be making an offer to anyone who is a member or a supporter, that if you want a list for your postcode and climate zone, you just need to give me your postcode, and I will do that for supporters and members. Um, Pretty simple do's and don'ts. Let's just run through them quickly. Do mulch to retain moisture and build soil life. Do retain deadwood where safe. Habitat and fungal diversity is part of that practice. Prune to maintain shape, but leave dense cover for shelter. That's what I was alluding to. There are some plants that love to be pruned back hard. Now, if you have 3 or 4 hakeas that love that treatment, don't do them all at once. Don't do them all in the same season. Maybe do one, and then the next season do another one, and then the season after do another one, so that you maintain enough cover, enough refuge opportunities for the birds and animals that are using your garden. Um, Keep records. Yeah. When you planted, what you planted, where you got it, uh, and whether, if you know, also it's a useful thing to note, if you know it was uh, seed raised, cutting raised? Um, that's a good question to ask when you are buying your plant material too, and keep a record of what uses uh, different plants or different areas of your garden. Uh, don't use insecticides or herbicides. Don't clean up all your leaf litter or deadwood. If you want to take it away from one part of your garden, make sure you put it in another part of your garden. Uh, uh, don't plant those plants that are known environmental weeds or have weed potential. I try and talk about weed potential whenever I'm recommending plants nowadays because I think that's really important to do. So I'll always keep doing that. Uh, uh, don't ignore pet impact. Free roaming cats are a major cause of garden wildlife decline. Now, I'm going to be much harder about this. Don't consider a cat curfew. Just keep your cat constrained. And if you can't, don't have a cat. That would be my advice. Uh, check with your local council about what you can and can't plant. There will be some fire prone species that you cannot plant in some areas. So always check with your council before doing any garden redevelopment about what you can and cannot do, and species that they suggest and species that they say you cannot plant. Um, all right. Oh, I need to make that checklist downloadable, don't I? Measuring success and utilizing your garden as a resource. Success is more than a pretty garden, it's who you see and hear. Keep a log of birds, frogs, butterflies. You can contribute sightings to local citizen science projects. I need to expand that post, don't I, and put like bird data and iNaturalist and whatnot in it. Uh, so there we are. I think I will. I think we'll just go over this quick um, checklist to get started. Um, do a site map. That's the most important. And note sun and shade areas and your soil type. They're the most important things. Pick 3 things that you would like to do immediately that are your short term goals for your wildlife garden, e.g., attract honey eaters, establish a frog pond, get some frogs in, uh, create a log pile, a refuge for lizards or something. So just make 3 little goals and then work towards a planting palette, um, which will give you a mix which will reinforce tall, medium, short, ground cover, tufties. Uh, so you can pick, between 8 and a dozen species. Uh, install your permanent water, however you are going to do that, and at least one structural element that will provide habitat. Uh, so your small pond, rock stack, log pile, uh, mound of leaf litter. Um, if you have a wood pile for your home, incorporate that into your garden. That becomes habitat. You just got to make sure you replenish it as you burn it. You need to be replenishing it. Uh, mulch and plant in the right season. Set a watering schedule for the first 12 months. I'm happy to work with people about watering schedules too and what the actual watering needs are. So many people overwater their gardens. And overwatering can be very expensive. So you, and it can be detrimental to the survivability of your plants too when it comes to a serious drought. So uh, let's think about applying the minimum amount of water right from day one, uh, and just make it a rule: no broad spectrum pesticides, and also include fungicides and uh, just all the chemical nasties. Just don't even think about buying them. You would, and yeah, and if you ever do need to use anything like that, make it touch application, not broad spray. And then record what is in your garden over time and adapt your garden over time. Gardening is a process, it's not a result. Uh, okay, it's my little final thought. My little final thought. Uh, Habitat gardening is an ongoing conversation with nature. Small steps matter. Even a balcony with potted native plants and a shallow water dish can help native bees and small birds. Think ecosystem, not ornament. I think that's the important thing. It's like I said right at the start. You need to be in that mindset about that your garden is a resource for the animals around you. It's also going to double as a resource for you, and as uh, it's going to fulfill aesthetic needs that you have. But just start thinking about a habitat gardener rather than a gardener, or as a homeowner living in a space. Just just expand your vision, open your mind just a little bit more, and you'll get much more success. Um, Start with a plan. Pick local native plants. Provide water and shelter, and then watch and see what happens. And I want a customized planting plan for your suburb or sample layout, or um, tell me the size of your block. Actually, um, we'll start with this. Tell me your postcode, and um, I'll give you a planting list. We can start with that. Um, I'm trying to automate this, so bear with me. Um, so we're up for questions now. We're up for questions. I will let you know that uh, I'll let you know that these will all be all this stuff's going to be up and available uh, later on, and then I will hit the socials and let you know where to uh, where to find them. It will, I can tell you, it will be. Uh, I'm going to have different levels of detail too on the bird emergency website. Uh, the Bird Emergency website will have articles like this, and then there will be links to where you can get the detailed plant lists, and that will be on Patreon, Substack, and in a little while, the way I can sell them on the website uh, is a little bit expensive, so I'm going to try and avoid that until we get things going, and whether I find out if there's actually a demand for this. Stan says, thanks for that. My garden is all about habitat other than the veggie wicking beds and a few fruit trees. Well, they shouldn't be exclusive. See, you don't need to exclude wildlife to have a food production garden. Um, there are just some strategies you need to undertake in the food production part of your garden uh, that enables you to enjoy the food rather than the animals. So, that's about barriers and fencing and things like that. But also, as I have always say, if you provide the food that the animals want, they might not want your food. Um, so yeah, that's good. Uh, Now, Stan, what are the parrots? I mean, you would have you would have probably two species of pardalotes. You would have at least one kingfisher, I would think. Uh, you will have tree creepers. You will have you'll have neophema parrots, like you've probably got a blue wing, or a elegant, or a rock parrot. Uh, let me check. Let me check. Uh, what little neophemas have we got at Kangaroo Island? Um, do you have the ringneck parrot on Kangaroo Island? Um, do you get the rosellas on Kangaroo Island? Um, red rump, mulga parrots. And let's have a look. Rock parrot, elegant parrot, blue wing parrot. They'd all be likelies. Um, maybe cockatiels. Um, maybe the blue bonnet. A lot of options there, Stan. Um, uh, have to have a look on eBird, I guess, and see what has uh, been recorded breeding on Kangaroo Island, and from there you find out the heights and the aspect. Um, so yeah, terrific. Good luck, Stan. Good luck with that. Uh, okay, folks. I know I've been saying it for weeks. I've done so much work on getting all these lists together. Now I've just got to test the delivery system, and I'll be doing that. Well, as soon as I've made myself a snack after signing off now, and we'll get some Patreon and some Substack and some links on the website, and reorganizing the bird emergency website a little bit so that there's a, uh, a big category for habitat gardening. And I did find out today that a lot of my podcast episodes are not being listed properly or something. I need to find that, uh, sort those issues out. So anyway, thank you. Who have we got still here? Stan still here. Everyone's on YouTube. That's good to know. So until you can hear Loz probably in the background, probably getting hungry. I haven't given Loz his apple yet for the day. Um, Next Saturday morning, 9:30 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. I'll be back with Habitat Gardening. And in the meantime, I will be providing a whole lot of resources that you can get hold of for all the things we've talked about. I'm trying. There's so much we've talked about, and I haven't even done a blog post for every conversation that we've had. So I'm working my way back through that to make it much easier for you to access the information that we've been talking about for years about habitat gardening. Enjoy your weekend. I'm Grant. I'm a bird nerd. I'm a horticulturist. This is Habitat Gardening on the Bird Emergency. Enjoy your weekend. See ya.